talk about transferring images. There are many ways to transfer images, and I've used quite a few different techniques, and of course they result in a very different texture. But the one we're going to do today is using a gloss gel in order to transfer an image to your panel surface or your paper. It's sort of based on Jonathan Talbot's technique, a new approach, which he uses gloss gel actually as his adhesive. So this book is titled Collage Without Liquid Adhesives, which can be handy depending on what papers you're using too. You might not want a liquid adhesive. But we're not going to be using this as a gluing method today, but as a transfer method. And hopefully you'll enjoy seeing how to do it. Okay, the first part of this method is you have to coat your image that you want to use. Now, I picked this image out, number one, because it has some pretty good contrast. And with transfers, more contrast is better. You'll get a better result, especially when we do a different technique down the road. And this one is just basically going to be using our polymer medium gloss, and gloss does seem to be the best. You can use matte. I've used matte before, but the gloss actually seems to work a little bit better. The first part of this process is covering the image with the gloss gel, and you really want to put a substantial amount on it and make a nice thick coating. I've used a heavier paper for this particular one. It is a paper that Jonathan Talbot sells. It's a little bit heavier so that you get a little bit more substance to the paper than other papers. However, I have also used just my Epson Premier Matte paper. I'm going to be putting an awful lot of polymer, and you can see that, I hope, because I wanted to form a pretty thick, resilient kind of coating to this image. The second part of this poly coating is you have to put it on the surface that you're going to be applying this image to. So we're going to move the image out of the way and let it dry, and that's going to take some time before we can get to the second part of this way of doing this. So this is going to be the panel that I'm going to be using for this image now. And now I'm applying the same poly coating, and I'm going to put a lot of it on here. And that is going to have to really dry, because in order for these to work, the two items have to be dry so I can stick them together. So again, I'm putting a pretty substantial amount of the poly coating on this. And eventually when I get done with this, if I ever use this panel for a real finished product, I will probably use a matte coating on top of that, because I really don't like an over gloss showing so much. And that is partially why I cut those images out before I use them, so there wouldn't be a whole lot of overlay of extra white edges. We had to wait for all of this to dry. That was the gloss medium gel that we put on there, and that had to dry, plus it had to dry on the pieces that we covered with this. And actually we're going to have a third part to this, because then there'll be the removal of the transfer. These images were all put on Jonathan Talbot's image paper that you can purchase from him, because it is a little bit heavier. The second part of this would be to take the image and to put it where we're going to have it. And I'm just, planning on putting it here. So remember, we put the gloss gel on the front side, not on the back side. He puts it on the back side when he's going to use it as a glue, but we're not using it as a glue. We're using it just as a transfer at this time. So in order to get that to adhere, we have to use an iron. And that heat iron is going to melt the acrylic below and the acrylic on the front of the image and sear it together. This heat iron is a heat sealing iron. Now you can use a regular iron, but it doesn't get quite as intensely hot as this small iron surface does. It is actually extremely hot. According to this box, I got some little aluminum stand to hold it. I don't remember getting that, or else I went and lost it. I don't know what the heck the deal was. But because it is so hot, you don't want to put it on your paper or on your table, on your wood, because this could really burn it. So what I did was, I was looking around, what do I have in my studio? This is an empty pencil, color pencil box. There's nothing in it because I always have them on in a different box. And then I put a small one here. Woo, you can see that was hot. I picked it up, so it's really here. I put that on there so that it holds it in one place. I don't want it sliding all around when I'm using it. So anyway, you got a demonstration that this sucker is really hot and you don't want to get burned. Then in order to do that, so it's not going to get glued and get stuck to this whole thing, you use a release paper on top. And again, I purchased this release paper through Jonathan Talbert. Now you can get this. I went and bought some on Amazon, and I was kind of excited that, wow, that was a really good price. Well, it turns out because it's darn small. I guess I should have read the measurements better, but you know, it looked big in the little illustration. I can still use these if I do a transfer on something small like a postcard, or if I just have a small image that I'm going to stick on, but it wasn't big enough for that. So again, this is the release paper. It's basically a silicone treated non-stick paper. You sometimes come across that on rolls of various sticky products, so you could probably use those that way too. But you have to have something between the iron and the actual surface. So then you're just basically going to iron. You're going to press this down. I press it down hard. Sometimes it says not to do it too long, but I don't know. I'm one of those people, if it says to do it 1 minute, I do it a minute and a half. I don't know. I'm always thinking, okay, is this hot enough or going to be good enough? But I'm going to push this on here as hard as I can. I'm going to let that image get really hot. And you can see that the release paper is even buckling a little bit because we're talking about something that's pretty hot. And I'm just going to let that iron on. I do like to do the point and really press in, especially because this one, I cut out some small parts in it, and I want to make sure that those are really sealed down. I can sort of see them through the release paper. The release paper is pretty thick, so I don't entirely. I especially want the edges to be done. And then I'm going to pick this up and check and see exactly, well, is it getting down there or not? Well, I don't think I did this part as hot. I can see this is good and hot, but I didn't get the top part of that, so I'm not seeing it as well. So I'm going to press in harder. I put this setting on high. You can see there's a knob there, and I put that on very, very hot, the hottest setting there is. So I could do it. Because I thought, what would it be like if I took this thinner one and I put a red on top of a red? Will I get a nice faded image? Now there's a lot of texture here, so she's not going to come out like exactly like that. She's not going to look like that at all. It's going to be blended into the other red. And I thought, what the heck? Let me try that. Let's see what happens. It could be pretty interesting. So again, I'm going to repeat the process. So now I'm going to take that same release paper. I'm going to put it over this whole thing. And I'm going to sear this one on as well. Basically what we're doing is melting the gloss that was on the front of this paper and the gloss that is on the panel. Well, it's cooled off pretty good. The paper feels pretty cool. The next step is to put water on it, and I brought some extra water so I don't run out, but I'm not going to make you sit here and watch the whole water production because it takes a long time. Basically just putting water on the whole paper that was ironed on to the panel, and you can see it's soaking up water. Putting a lot of water on that. I want it to really soak in. Obviously the water is not going to make the acrylic come off. And what I'm going to start doing, as a matter of fact, I might, well, this one's soaking up a little bit. I'll pull out the other panel, do the same thing, get it started. Okay, now that I've got it soaking a little bit, now you start the rubbing, and you can see I'm rubbing off the paper. And I tried to do it a little bit gentle because I want to make sure that I'm not losing the image, that it has really stuck on well, which in most cases it does. And you can see that bit by bit. Now this is a time-consuming kind of thing, so this will stay somewhat coated, just like this little one here. I rubbed that one quite a bit, but it's not fully removed, and then when it dried, it actually showed that there was more paper on it than I thought there was. So sometimes you have to go back and do it a second time. Well, you can see things are really progressing. This still isn't dry yet, and I'm going to let it dry. Now, both of these are dry. You can see they're white. I would have to work harder to get rid of this side here where there is where it could take more water to remove that. That is why it's actually kind of nice when you really cut it close and get rid of that paper before you do this. But this is all removable, especially in this middle part here. All right, I moved all the wet things out of the way so that we would have a clean table here, a dry table. And I wanted to show you some reasons why a transfer collage is really interesting or very beneficial. My father lived abroad actually for a long, long time in Shanghai, and he went to Bali. These are from Bali. These are scrolls on fabric, very old. They are antiques. And I wanted to use some of these images or color shapes in a collage, but I did not want to obviously cut up this antique scroll. So I had to figure out a way to do it, and that's when the idea of transferring these images to a collage would be pretty good. So you might have at home some items, heirlooms, photographs, family photographs that you don't want to destroy, but you want to use for a collage. This is also an antique book, and I love the cover of this book, and so I did copy it on my ink printer, inkjet printer, just like I did the scroll materials, and got some nice images that I could use. So you can print things on your copy machine and then use those images in order to make a collage. And I'm going to show you how that turned out because I do have the collage right here that I did use these items on. And this is what it looked like when it was done. You can see all the Bali images that are here, cut parts, sometimes just cutting a color part of it, or sometimes the image, part of the image, foot there. I also use the Sky High to Shanghai book. And one thing you can notice about a transfer image is that if you want the lettering to be this way, you have to reverse it on your copy printing, because otherwise it will be in reverse when you do the transfer. It's going to be reverse. So you can either let it be reversed like I did. It wasn't important to me that the title be exactly like this, but if I had wanted it, I would have had to copy it in reverse, and then I could put it on there in reverse. So that just gives you an idea of how to do these. Also, I have used a matte coating over my collage like I always do, and that does tone it down, though it does not usually make it as toned down as this. However, I allowed that to happen because I did like that whole kind of smoky kind of coverage over the whole thing.